Hi, I'm Larry Schultz, and welcome to one of two video tutorials that we have on rigging. This first one, I want to show some things we can do with an ARM object to deal with deformations. So let's start out by going to the Setup tab here, and let's go to Draw Child Bones. And I'm just going to draw the first one here, second one over to here, third one here. Okay, and let's turn on Bone X-ray so we can see the bones. So we've got these three in here, and this is sort of a typical way that you might see these set up. So let's go to frame 30, and I'm going to select all these bones in here and just hit the R key so they're rested. So at frame 30 we can do some posing and test this out and see how it's going to work out for us. Let's hit Y for rotate, and let's bend it like this. Now we can immediately see there's some issues right here with this gap right in the middle at the joint. We're losing volume. So one of the things I'm going to do is I'm going to hit Shift O, which is object selection. So it'll select the object of the whatever bone I'm on. Hit P for properties, and let's set the subdivision order to last. And we can see that change it a little bit. But this is actually the way we want it to be set for. Now we can also do another thing. I'm going to go and select a bone and just hit P for properties and set it to inverse distance greater than 128. And see, that gives it a little bit of improvement. It just gives us a faster fall off. We can also just, if we want to determine if we want to use faster bones or not, and in this case you won't see much difference. The difference with faster bones and with it turned off is that with that turned off, it means that every bone is going to affect every vertex in this object. And faster bones means that the four closest bones to a vertex are the only ones that's going to affect it. And this usually it speeds things up, but it isn't always something that will necessarily affect deformations one way or the other in a good or bad way. It's usually sometimes pretty slight, but it is useful, like I said, if you want to speed things up. So this kind of helped out, okay, with the deformations. Another thing I want to do is I'm going to go back here and I'm going to select this bone here. And Setup tab, let's go to Bone Split and just split it in two. And I'm going to do the same thing with this one. I'm going to split it into two. And I'm going to select them all again and just hit the R key, make sure they're all rested. Now the advantage of using the bones in this way is that I can use this one, for example. Let's hit Y for rotate. Let's twist it a little bit. This is going to give a little bit better deformation in the shoulder. Now this isn't perfect, but you can see that it's not twisting the shoulder really. So if I use this one, the elbow for example, to only bend like this and then do any twisting with this one up here, see, we don't lose our deformation in the joint. So the reality was what I would do if I were to twist the whole arm is use this one and this one at the same time. So watch. So this will give us a much better deformation than if we did it without. So see, we're not going to really mess up the elbow deformation. Okay, so let's go undo that. Another thing that I want to deal with is at this elbow bending right here. What I'd like to do is to get it to bend a little bit more in the center, and then deal with the how the elbow itself deforms. We can see that it's not really holding its shape very well. And also over here. So there's a couple of things we can do. I'm going to go in here on frame 0 and I'm going to go to setup tab. Actually take this bone and I'm going to go tip move. And I can move this sort of over here and hit the space bar to drop the tool. This is just little experiments that we can do. And I'm going to click on this one and go tip move. And sort of just get it back to where we had it before. Right, like so. Okay, now just to straighten this out a little bit easier, I was wanting to get the tip back over there. So let's select those two and hit Control J, which is joint move. And let's just bring it there, hit the space bar, drop the tool. And once more, let's select them all and hit R for rest. Now, by the way, resting is not the same as Control R, which just turns bones on and off. Because watch, if I go here and hit Control R, see how it just pops away? But if I hit Control R again, it comes back. Now, if I accidentally mix this up with the R key, see what happens? Is it screws it up. So we need to come back here to our rest pose and hit R, and that will make sure it's working again. So don't mix those up, because that will definitely cause you some problems. So here's what I see. Well, watch the elbow. See how it just kind of, the whole joint just sort of collapses. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to select this bone and hit Control J. Okay. Usually you select 2 bones, but in this case just the one. And I'm going to move the tip right out here. And spacebar to drop the tool. R to rest it. And let's see what happens. Okay. Right now, not real pretty. But it's keeping the elbow. Okay, and let's make sure this one is also rested and that one's rested. Okay. So see how it's collapsing, but the elbow itself, we'll deal with one thing at a time, is keeping its shape pretty well. Okay, so here's the little trick I'm going to do. I'm going to select this bone here, and I can go here to draw child bones and just bring it out there and hit R on frame 0. And look what that does. It helps keep the volume of the joint there. Now say on frame 30, see how it's, say this is as far as we're going to pose it or something. We still may not have, perfect deformations there. And let's go to our perspective view. But it's not too bad. We're keeping pretty good joint volume. So here's what I usually do is I'm going to hit P for properties. So we got our bone properties. Now watch what happens. This is kind of interesting. You can't animate this, but we can adjust the rest length to give us the best deformation we can get for that pose. Because when the arm's straight, I mean, face it, it's not deforming, so we don't really care too much. If there's any problems, it's with the model. So let's go to our pose frame, and let's adjust the rest length and watch the geometry in the joint. So see that? I can get that just the way that I want. Okay, I can also do something else. I can go back here and see that, and that's not too bad actually. Okay, something else I can do. I can go back here, and I can also, let me just minimize this. At frame 0, I can go back and draw child bones. And I'm going to draw one right back to about here and hit R. Okay. And same thing, let's go open up our bone properties panel, and let's adjust the rest length on this one. So you can see how it affects it. Okay. So you adjust it to where it looks the best that it can. And we can still go in here, for example, and just hit Control J for joint move, and we can bring it out here. Drop the tool with the space bar, R for rotate, R for rest, excuse me. And same thing, I can adjust this one. Control J, move it over here. Say, for example, space bar, R for rest. Okay, and I see that. We're getting collapsing in there, so hit P for properties. And let's adjust the rest length. Okay, so we get a good balance. So that looks pretty good right there. Like this. So the nice thing is we have these hold bones that are independent. And if you also notice that the bone's pivot point, even though this one is still the parent for this one, and the bone's over here, the pivot point of the bone is unchanged. So it's not dependent upon the tip of the bone. It's really dependent upon the pivot point of its parent. So here's what's really useful about using these hold bones like this, is that they can be animated. Now, one thing too is this twist bone right here, which is, we can still do our twisting with it if we need to, but what we want to do as well is we can go on to frame 30 here. Let's hit P for properties again and watch when we adjust its rest length. Okay, so like right about there. So we get pretty good deformations on the arm. Now, what's nice too about these hold bones, this is really kind of neat, is that they can be animated as well. So let's go to frame 30 and watch this. We can just bring it here, H for stretch. Okay, I'm going to kind of exaggerate this a little bit. Let's do the same thing with this one. Y for rotate, H for stretch. Okay, so again, we're even getting a little bit better deformations, and we're getting a little bit of movement on the musculature there. Now, here's something else we can do as well. Let's go here to 30. Let's hit number 4. We can go to the perspective view here. So here's something I may want to do here as well, is on frame 30 is also adjust this. So get it to thicken up a little bit on 30. Like so. Okay. So what we can do to automate this, okay, because we may have this keyframed motion. And the other thing too is we can do more, that we can actually move this bone on frame 30. We can go like this. Okay, we can move it. It doesn't have to stay stationary. See that? So we do whatever necessary to make sure that the deformations look good. Okay, we can add more than one hold bone, but again, they can be animated. But what we do is we can use a plugin here called Cyclist. We can hit M for motion modifiers, go to Cyclist, double click, and then in the Cyclist control panel, we can determine, okay, which channels are following something, are we using which channels on this object here, our hold bone, will be controlled by, say, the rotation of this bone in its heading in this case. So we say, what's the cycle controller? Okay, first thing I want to do, let's rename this one. Let's call it elbow. So when the elbow rotates in its heading, okay, let's go here. Let's hit M, double click, and cycle controller is going to be elbow, and we'll say that it's heading angle, and then we'll give it we need to give it a range. Okay, hit OK, and we say okay from 12 degrees to 106, but we'll just say 108 to be sure. Okay, so we'll say 10 through 108, and then we'll say at end behavior stop and just hit OK. And I'm going to take this, copy it, go to this one, paste it. Okay, so now what we can do is to say change this to frame 60 and delete this keyframe. Okay, so what'll happen is that this will determine how much of the cycle is repeated. Okay, so again, we just go in here and hit M, double click, and we'll say yes, the frames 0 to 30. 0 to 30 is the cycle frames that we did on those pieces, and then the heading angle is going to be affecting those things. Oops, 10 through 108. Okay, double click, 10 through 108 degrees. Okay, so you can see, let me make sure that that's still doing, yeah. So watch, you can see the motion on those change, see that? So they're cycling through the motion. Okay, so if I do it quickly, say let's say at frame 10, okay, like that, and then 30, let's go back to here. See, so however fast we do it, it does it. So we can make it repeat those motions that we've done on that. So we can do muscle bones that way, and we can sculpt the way that this works exactly the way we want the response to be. And then once we got it the way we want, we just let it go off on its own. So it works pretty well. Okay, so this concludes this one. So hopefully this will give you some information that's useful, that there's other ways to do joint compensation and affect deformations very easily. And we can also go in there in Modeler, for example, and just create weight maps on these areas and just allow these bones to affect those particular weight maps. So this one for the bicep and this one down here in the forearm. So we don't have to just rely on particular, on just using certain ways to do deformations. And this is an easy way because you can see the results in real time. Again, thanks for listening.